we'll start off with the first question that was submitted, and looks like Andy submitted this question. This is a really good question for you, Cole, because I think we were talking about this recently. So Andy asks, how are you combating new storage limits for sellers? And in a sub comment, Becky mentions that she's struggling with these new limits, and I'm wondering if I should start looking into a third-party logistics company, and does anyone have any experience with a 3PL? So it's kind of those two questions there. If you wouldn't mind tackling that one, Cole.
Yeah, so obviously Amazon just made some updates to their inventory restrictions. I think it was either earlier this week or last week. They used to have a 200 unit limit on all new ASINs, and they've kind of lifted that and put some more so high level account restrictions as far as the total amount of inventory you're able to have on hand. So on one end, with the 200 limit, now that that's lifted, it definitely makes it a lot easier to manage those new product launches. I know for a lot of sellers, it was really a headache to manage that 200 inventory unit limit early on. But I think now that Amazon has kind of gone away from that and put in account level restrictions, I think having some sort of warehouse third-party logistics solution is probably the way to go if you really want to be able to manage that IPI score that Amazon puts on your account. I think having someone who can help assist with the warehousing of your goods, so that way you're not overstocked or understocked at Amazon at all times, would probably be the best solution. I think Amazon is just going to continue to probably make it a bit more difficult to stay in stock and manage all the restrictions they have. So I think getting ahead of it and having some sort of 3PL is kind of the way to go.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's really good news for all of us sellers. I know this has been a nightmare with the pandemic restriction, but as you know, that's been lifted. A very important thing is definitely keeping your inventory, monitoring your inventory, improving your sell-through rate. All that matters, because of course, restrictions could come into play if you're not monitoring that and your product is just not moving freely. That, and of course, you want to avoid any long-term storage fees. So just be active, play a very active role in monitoring your inventory. All right, so now that we got that question tackled, let's go ahead and see what the next question here is. I keep losing the thread. There we go. Next question is from Nice, and they're asking, why is the brand registry process so long? I can go ahead and tackle this one. So essentially, when you're doing brand registry, you have to trademark your brand. And that's really where the delay comes into play. It's a government agency that oversees this, and it's just a matter of going through them and getting the approval and so on. And that's really where the biggest time delay comes into play. Once you have a trademark, the brand registry process should not be so complicated and take so long. So that's essentially what you're looking at when you're dealing with brand registry. All right. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I just know there's a few different companies out there who do offer some services to kind of expedite that process. Definitely kind of how Rolando mentioned, once you get the actual trademark, it doesn't take a whole lot of time for Amazon to approve you. So it's kind of that upfront work that takes up the majority of the time. But I would recommend looking out for some other services, Amazon related services, who can kind of help you expedite that process. I know there's quite a few out there.
And all right, Brett has the next question, asks, when trying to create my first listing, it shows as an FBA listing, but when I tried to get the FNSKU to send to my package designer, I saw that it was the same as the ASIN. After much searching on Google, I was able to create a new listing with the same UPC by editing the listing and selecting add another condition. Now I have a new listing that is FBA, and the FNSKU is different than the ASIN. Question 1, can I delete the old listing without causing any issues? And then question 2, I didn't change the offer launch date or the launch date, and it's been a few weeks. Have I lost my honeymoon period? Should I delete all of it and start again? So just so long story short, Brett, you can delete that without any impact. Of course, that being said, as long as you haven't already sent your FNSKUs to your supplier and they've already printed them and placed them on your product. So you have no problems in starting all over again. I do find it odd that the FNSKU matched your ASIN, but it looks like you were able to correct it the second time around. That honeymoon period really doesn't come into play until your product hits Amazon's fulfillment center. So your listing does not go live until your product arrives. So it's actually just dormant. In fact, no one can even search for it or find it until the product hits Amazon's fulfillment center. So yeah, you're good on that regard. Just make sure that now you've got the correct FNSKU, and that's what you're sending to your supplier to print your labels or place them directly on your product.
Yeah, and you can also update that launch date that you have in your listing. If you want to do that, just to kind of put it closer to when you actually get your inventory in stock, I typically do that. I'd recommend giving it a try. I don't know if there's any real proof if it has an impact or not, but something I typically like to do.
Awesome. All right, looks like Brett has the next question. How do you actually rank for a keyword? Just by having it in your listing? Is the second question. Having someone click on your listing after they have searched with that keyword, or does someone have to search that keyword and then buy your product? So in order to rank, yes, it's Amazon's algorithm is not as simple as as just one metric that's feeding the algorithm. It's all of the above. So we don't know specifically what will directly impact, but I will say sales definitely, a sell through, it will definitely positively impact that because the way you always want to look, the way Amazon treats its algorithm is, or listings, is the one that provides the best user experience for a customer. They always put the customer first. So if a customer specifically searched for a specific phrase and ultimately converted to Amazon, that will rank highly for that particular product or boost up your ranking. So that's why it's the sell through is critical, and making sure that when you go to launch, that you do have all your ducks in a row, that you have the listing in terms of your images, your bullet points, your title. I think a lot of people tend to just create like a mock listing and then forget to go in and make changes just before the listing goes live. So that's why I say right out the gate, if you can make sure that you've completed, you've checked off all the marks and you're good to go, then ultimately, yes, you will provide a good user experience for your customer, which will help you rank for the specific keywords that you're ranking. Now, of course, there are certain places that you want to specify that are very critical, like in your title, you want to put your main keyword, and then in your bullet points, and then your back in search terms as well. All right, anything you want to add to that, Cole?
I think you kind of hit it spot on, Rolando. I think it obviously starts with having those keywords in your listing. Like you mentioned, Brett, that's kind of step one, making sure you have those keywords you want to rank in your listing. But then it really all flows through to sales, all of the conversion, the total sales, the PPC sales, everything that you do, your rank is kind of tied to sales on those words. So yeah, it's definitely first and foremost focus on having those words in your listing. And then on the other side of things, just doing whatever you can to convert on those words is what's going to really ultimately move your listing up in the rank.
All right. And we've got Brett with the
We
next
got us
question.
3 in a row.
We're moving along. We're actually getting through the questions that were submitted previously. This looks like, Brett, you have the last one from the previous thread. So it looks like it says, I'm planning on using the Vine program. Do I sign up for that for after my stock arrives at Amazon, or can I do that ahead of time? I'm a little stumped there. I don't know if you happen to have any insight if you could do it prior. I don't believe you can, but I I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, I've never used the Vine program. I'm not exactly sure when you can sign up for it. I think that it would probably make sense just to wait till your inventory gets there. I think it's a fairly quick process as far as enrolling in it. So yeah, Brad, I would recommend you just wait till your inventory gets there. You can turn on the Vine program. Yeah, that's about all I can say. I've never used the Vine program. I know it can be great for some cases. I would just say make sure you have a very quality product. It's a good way to get a lot of reviews, but you also want to make sure you have a very quality product, because sometimes they can grade you a little bit difficult. So just keep that in mind.
I'll also add to that, along with Vine, be ready to start dabbling now, like in this period of waiting for your supply to arrive. Definitely start dabbling with PPC. Try to get familiarized with with the interface, and you can even begin to create campaigns and just kind of like walk through them. One of the beauties of PPC is that if you run out of supply, they'll automatically shut off. So yeah, just get familiarized with it, because I think at launch, I'm a very huge proponent of right at launch, launching your PPC campaigns along with offering a coupon. I think that's a good incentive. When people see that little green badge with the discount amount, that's a huge incentive for people to click on your listing, and then ultimately, drive that sale. So that's those are the two critical things that I always look for in a product launch. All right. So now we jump to the new thread where everyone's at. And so it looks like Andy has the next question. Andy's asking, started selling books and was going to make the switch to private label. Let me see if I'm actually doing this right, because it looks like my order is a little off. Give me 1 second, but I'll finish this question off. There we go. Facebook's kind of funny. It's sometimes reorganized comments and they're like out of sync in terms of
right.
They were submitted.
They're bouncing around.
But we'll answer Andy's question since it's what's appearing on for me here. Let me double check here what's going on. It looks like Andy has the
they're bouncing around.
But we'll answer Andy's.
I think we're getting some background noise there, Rolando.
Yeah. I violated my own rule. The site was not muted. All right, so let's see here. But we'll go with Andy's question first, and then now I think I have it all in sync and in order. Okay. Started selling books. Started selling books and was going to make the switch to private label. My inventory is now at a cap of 1,000 units, IPI score of 509. Recommend sending private label units to house, then send it to FBA. And MF units till IPI and unit restrictions is raised. So what happens is the cap typically is on a SKU basis, on a SKU level. So I would recommend, if possible, definitely send direct to Amazon. It's just going to save you a lot of money down the road potentially. So that would be option number one. Now, of course, as you're creating the listing, that's when you really will know what Amazon caps you at. And so if it's saying that, that you still have like a restriction based on your IPI score, and let's just say it's 500, but you have 1,000 units, that's when you would want to just ship in maybe the 500 units and have the other 500 stored at your house. And then you could ship those in as your inventory starts to deplete. So I would always, step number one, try to send direct to Amazon. Like I said, it avoids that extra step of it arriving to your house. You've paid shipment for it to arrive to your house, but now you have to pay shipment to ship it to Amazon's fulfillment centers. And normally they're going to partition it up into like 3 fulfillment centers. One will be like in California, one in Florida, another in New York. So right out the gate, if you can, just get it to Amazon's fulfillment center. Now, of course, alternatively, if you're using a 3PL service, you would send it to a 3PL service and send whatever amount that that you're capped at, based on that. I guess you could say that logistical process that you choose.
Yeah.
All right. But with the restrictions lifted, that's a good, finally, like it's like a little sigh of relief, and things should start to smoothen out a little better.
Yeah, I think now that Amazon has lifted those or kind of eased up on it a little bit, it should make it easier for launching products and just kind of getting adjusted to the whole inventory restriction that they have.
All right, looks like Waqar has the next question. How do I arrange a utility bill on virtual address? Unfortunately, it cannot be done. But here is one of the many challenges that someone that's outside of the United States, if you're looking to sell in the United States and you're looking to verify your address, my recommendation is use your physical address. Use the address, say you live in Italy or whatever country you're living in. We had definitely use that physical address, because Amazon does want to verify. They don't care if you reside within the United States. Now, of course, they're also looking to see if it's a country that's not restricted, because there are a few countries that that you cannot sell into the United States. But definitely that would be my first recommendation, is just use your physical address, and you can go through the verification process without any challenges. All right. Looks like Angela has the next question. I've heard that I should ask for mail order packaging for shipping cartons. What is mail order packaging?
So I don't know if you know the answer to this one, Rolando, but I think it's a type of box that you can use for your shipment. I was looking into different types of, I think it's like just your regular packaging box. You have a mail order type of box. So to my knowledge, it's just a different type of box that you pack your goods in. I think if you do kind of just a quick Google search, you should see exactly what type of box you're referring to.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, mail order is essentially a box where it could, because you have a carton, of course, on the exterior, which protects your units from being shipped to Amazon. Amazon will typically package it mail order. They'll box your, your even if it's just in a poly bag, for example, they'll box it in an Amazon box and protect it. But with bubble wrap and whatnot, a mail order would mean that it's a box that literally can just ship. That unit can ship, just slap a label on it and it can get shipped, and your product won't get damaged. And typically the exterior carton will have, let's say, 15 units inside of the carton, and the within it is mail order type of packaging. All right, Angela has the next question. I want to create an assembly instruction sheet with images. What type of freelancer do I need to engage? Is it a graphic designer? Typically, a graphic designer should be able to do that for you. But then you might need to get, if you want some like renderings that are like 2D images that are essentially like, you might need a CAD designer. And so that's going to just be like an additional tool in the arsenal that a graphic designer has. They can create CAD designs. And so it's critical that they do have that. So I would suggest that when you're going through and like looking at who the individual is that you're going to select, that CAD design is essentially in their resume.
Yeah, I would check out our Jungle Market. We have a kind of a freelance website filled with a number of different skilled professionals. And I think a big thing on there is graphic design. So check out the Jungle Market. It's a kind of a freelance website that we manage here at Jungle Scout. A ton of different options on there.
Awesome. Let's go ahead, and it looks like Angela has the next question. And so it says, how many keywords do you recommend for each manual campaign when launching? I've heard anything from 15 to 20 to 300 to 400. I don't know if you want to chime on this. I have an answer for it too, but we'll both.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's really a magic number. I know typically when I launch my PC campaigns for a new product, I think maybe closer to that 15 to 20 number is good, just to get some feedback and understand how well the words are performing, if the campaign's going in the right direction. But I think over time, definitely as you get more information, you want to continue to add as many keywords as you can get in there. And also, I think a big thing from when you launch your product is to have as much real estate as you can on Amazon. So there might be an advantage as well to having more of those keywords in your campaign, seeing what works well, what doesn't work well. So I wouldn't really limit yourself. I would find probably as many relevant keywords as you can. And if you want to prevent any overspending, you can obviously use the budgets that they have on Amazon. So yeah, I don't know if there's really a magic number, but if you've got a lot of relevant keywords, I think you should probably add them to your campaign.
And I'll just add to that, that the more my golden rule of thumb with this is the more keywords, the more management, the more involved you're going to have to be in your PPC management. So that's why the 15 to 20 to start out is a good starting point, because you could continue to add keywords to your manual campaigns. Start out with 15 to 20 because just those are typically going to be very broad keywords. They're going to be the ones that you're really targeting and that you're most interested in, are going to give you the best results. And so that's why it's and then also keep in mind that each keyword that you add, they have to cycle through, and your budget's going to be spent faster if you have more keywords. So definitely limit it in the early days, and then you can, as you find, I always like to start out with a broad and a phrase matched campaign, and then start moving the long tail keywords that I'm discovering that are top performers into my exact match campaign. And that's basically where, you know, you'll have a little extra budget for that exact match campaign, and ultimately you could just continue to add keywords there. You can still add keywords into your broad and phrase match, but like I said, I always match the broad and phrase match identically in terms of what keywords they're targeting. And then of course the exact match will be where I start to put the top performing keywords. All right. Andy says, sorry, I'm late. It's all right. We're doing these weekly. For those that missed the announcement last week or a couple weeks back, is that we're going to be running these on a weekly cadence. We used to do them on a monthly cadence. Surveys, our survey results showed that there was an interest of having weekly coaching sessions. So ask and ye shall receive. So here we are, going to be incorporating a lot of the Jungle Scout team to answer questions. It's always good to get different perspectives in this whole seller journey. So,
hey, Rolando, are these saved on Facebook? So if they want to go back and rewatch it, can they do that? Okay. All right. Yeah, Andy, absolutely. if you missed our response to a few of your questions, you'll be able to go back and rewatch it.
We also upload them to the Freedom Builder Bootcamp course modules. There's a module there specifically for live coaching calls. So if you want to use that as an option, then we certainly do have them all stored there. So a whole library of coaching calls. So let's see here. Looks like Wakar has the next question. How do I protect my product from Me Too listings or hacked by other sellers? So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's possible that your listing could get what we call hijacked. The way to protect that ultimately is by private label for one, private label, but also having your branding directly on your product and on your packaging. That's going to provide a sense of protection, because what happens with someone that's hijacking a listing is it's not your product. And so you could quickly resolve that with Amazon they'll just need to see what, like the product, and you'll just notify them that someone has hijacked your listing. Another way too is just to nicely send a cease and desist to the seller that's trying to hijack your listing. These two methods have been pretty effective for me. And ultimately, a lot of times when your listing's hijacked, it's just that someone may have purchased your product and they bought it at a deep discount. You were like offering it like in the early days, really reduced price to get, to get your sell-through rate up and bump you up in ranking. But now you're full price. And so they want to come in and sell. And to be honest, that's no big deal. You're going to have they probably have 5 units of your product. Just let them sell them through. That's nothing to worry about. All right. So Angela asks, when launching, how long do you leave your campaigns run before optimizing? 2 weeks, 4 weeks? I'll let you chime in, Cole. I don't want to hog up all the airtime.
No, all good. Yeah, so launching new campaigns, typically I like to give it at least a couple of weeks to see how things are performing. I will check it every day or two early on just to see if there's anything that's completely out of whack. If there's a word that's like way overspending and it's not converting, then maybe within that 2-week buffer, you want to either remove that word, pause it, edit to negative. But I think overall, a good rule of thumb is to give it at least a couple of weeks to get feedback, understand how it's performing, and then make adjustments from there. And if there are words that haven't really given you a whole lot of data in the first couple of weeks, let them run for 2 more weeks, maybe increase the bids. That way you have a good sample size to really see if that word's going to do well for you. I think you really want to make sure you give a word a chance before you shut it off, especially early on, to make sure that maybe there's an opportunity to sell on that word, and it just kind of took a few clicks before you start to see the sales come through. So yeah, I'd give it at least a couple of weeks before you start to make any adjustments.
Awesome. All right. Andy had the next question, but we actually answered that first. So Andy, your question, if you just look back, we answered your question, I believe. Yeah, that was the first question we answered. Angela has the next question. How often do you optimize your PPC campaigns? I think you touched on that, Cole. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think outside of like that window after you launch your product, at least maybe a couple times a week, you want to look at it, see how it's performing once the product's a bit more established. It's never something you're going to kind of want to just look on every few weeks. You want to stay on top of it and see what's performing well and what's not performing well. So it's really kind of a never-ending cycle.
Looks like Becky has the next question. Do you know how the new inventory restriction limits work? I'm worried about getting fines. So inventory restrictions. So the good news, Becky, is that the inventory restrictions are lifted. And so that's a plus. Now, what happens is when you're creating, just to answer like how it all works, the mechanics, when you're creating your listing, Amazon will just, if you're saying that you're shipping in, and let's say that you are capped at a certain limit based on a low IPI score, then what will happen is it'll just give you like an error message that will say you've exceeded the amount or the limit, and it'll tell you how many you can send in. And so you can't run into an issue, and they catch it up front. And then depending on what we were talking about earlier, is that you do want to have a good IPI score, because that will ultimately determine how much inventory you can send in over the long haul. They usually have very high limits set, but of course, as you start to, if say, for example, your product is just not moving and it's sitting at their warehouse, the bigger challenge there becomes now you're going to start getting fees. And then, after a year, like if the product's still sitting there, then they have some exorbitant like long-term storage fees. So that's why it's important that you manage inventory appropriately. You see how much you're selling on a daily basis, essentially determine how much, I like to have 3 months worth of inventory at Amazon. Cole, actually, maybe you could touch on this too, like how much inventory how you manage your inventory.
Yeah, I typically target close to 8 weeks for any fluctuations that happen. Sometimes it's just kind of a pain getting inventory there. So you want to have sufficient stock, but there's also a level of having too much there. So I'm typically right around 2 months. Rolando mentioned 3 months. I think anywhere in that area is sufficient. And Becky, if you already created your shipments and they've approved you sending in those 1,600 units, that should be fine. If it's already in their system, they're not going to delete the shipment on you. But yeah, going forward, they probably, when you create your shipment, they will likely flag it and tell you got to ship in fewer if you've hit that limit.
Your inventory limits decrease, if I'm not mistaken, from what I'm gathering here, is that you've already used up the 1,600. So that factors into your cap that Amazon initially is going to set for you. So you still have what remains. And then as you sell that through, of course, that increases. So that's why your sell through really does matter. And it's very important that you try to move your product ways to do that is, we talk about coupons, we talk about PPC. Those are obviously going to put your product right up front and center from the get-go. Try to find ways to incentivize your buyers, and typically that's going to come in the form of deals, right? Like I talked about, coupons and maybe discounted products. So I've had to, at times, there's some product that's going to get hit with a fee, and just to move it quickly so that it didn't get hit with the fee, I've had to, just kind of a rock bottom sale. It's all got to go. And then I got rid of the product in time for it not to get hit with any fees. It happens. It's just a matter of like monitoring your inventory. You're going to have multiple SKUs. You just got to manage it well. And that's why Jungle Scout's inventory manager tool is phenomenal for that, because you can kind of just start your day, kind of check through, have a little checklist. One of the things that you want to check is your inventory. So yeah. Angela has the next question. How do I find my restock limit? Amazon says to go to inventory performance or shipping queue in Seller Central, but I can't see what number I need to look at. So that is pointing you in the right direction. I'd have to pull up Seller Central to see specifically. So, and if maybe you can tackle the next question, Cole. Let me see if I can, unless you know off the top of your head where the pathway.
Yeah. So actually, where it's at is when you go to the Manage Inventory tab in Seller Central, hover over that. There's a little drop down, and I'm pretty sure it's called Inventory Planning, and you'll click on that. And then there should be a new screen that pulls up where there's a tab that says restock limits. And under there, you'll be able to see the restrictions they have for each of your ASINs. But I don't really know if there's a whole lot of restrictions specific ASINs, but if you want to see from an account level, on that same page of restock limits in the bottom left, there's a little gray like text box that you can click on, and it'll show you the total number of units that you can have for your product versus how many you already have there, and that'll kind of show you how much available space you have. So go to that inventory planning, click on restock limits, and then all the information should be in there for you.
All right. Looks like Angela has the next question. She's asking, do you pause PPC campaigns when the click-through rate, the CTR, as it's known as the abbreviation, falls below a certain percentage? If yes, what is that percentage? So for me and everybody, there's more than one way to handle PPC. And let me just get that out there, because everybody has kind of like a little differing view on it. And there really is no, there is a wrong way, but there's no like one exact right way, is probably the best way of putting it. So what I like to look at is I very rarely pause a campaign. One, the campaign is getting more data for me to work with. Some people like to parse time and like have it run at certain hours and so on. For me, I like to run it consistently, because I find that some of my shoppers will shop like early in the morning and then really late at night. And I guess I could probably parse out the middle, but then I just can't time it right. So in the early stages of a PPC campaign being launched, I want Amazon to give me the results. I want Amazon to give me that information. Now, if your click-through rate is it falls, there really isn't a percentage, I would say, because actually the click-through rate is going to be a very low percentage. I mean, you're probably talking about 0.5% is a really good click-through rate. So if you're, I would say if your click-through rate is dropping, it has to do something like, let's think about it in a sales funnel. Okay. Click through means that someone clicks and goes through and, like, you know, there was an impression, they clicked and they landed on your page and then they check out. So there's like a step in the funnel. Initially, if Amazon's presenting your ad and nobody's clicking, then solve that problem first. Okay, so what's the problem? My main image is not as appealing. My title is not as appealing. My price is not appealing. Because those are the things that show, or my reviews. So those are the things that you'll want to improve. That'll improve your click-through rate. The beauty about Amazon PPC is that it's not really complicated when you look at it in the form of a sales funnel, and you realize that Amazon's done most of the heavy lifting for us. They've done most of the work. We don't have to create any like elaborate images or video ads. We can, of course, but the main images is going to be on a white background. And so how is it going to appeal to the buyer? And then from there, kind of like work through the process. So, and what will help your conversion is ultimately the copy that's on your bullet points, you know, all that, make sure it's easy to read. I always talk about, you know, highlight the benefits, not just the features. So you want to include features and benefits. And that's really the recipe to conversion, is if you could drill down on the benefits to the user and they could see themselves like, this is going to improve their life, or it's going to, you know, it's just going to simplify whatever it is. Then, you know, you have a potential buyer there. That's probably like a long way of saying.
No, I think, yeah, no, that was good. That was good. I don't like to pause my PPC campaigns either. I think there's just something about having as much data as you can within the campaign. Just make tweaks to it as time goes on. But yeah, I don't typically pause my campaigns unless I'm going to completely redo the whole campaign. So I like to leave them running as long as possible.
All right. Angela asks, is it against terms of service to have reviews or testimonials in A+ content? I have a product with good reviews in the US, and I have just started selling in another country, but the reviews do not carry over. Can I copy and paste some of the reviews from the US in the A+ content of the new country? Short answer to that is no. And once again, this kind of goes into what I was talking about earlier. Use your A+ content to highlight the benefits of your product, because the reviews are there for a reason. And unfortunately, although they're not carrying over, like that's the one place Amazon only wants reviews, because they are verified. And to avoid Amazon, you know, in any way shutting down your listing, I wouldn't use those reviews on the listing itself. So just highlight your product. Try to do the best you can at like storytelling. I think stories sell. So if you can just like look at your feed like just one story unfolding and like intertwining and build that out, because the more that you could lead a customer from, okay, so they see the bullet points, they're convinced, but now they need a little bit more convincing. That's why they scroll down to the A+ content. Now the A+ content, you know, is even tells more of a story, more use cases, more ability to, you know, and how will it benefit them ultimately. So that's why I say A+ content, that's not a place to put any reviews. It's just a place to continue to tell your story. All right. Becky says on April 22nd, Amazon changed restrictions from ASIN level to storage type restrictions. Yes, I guess just kind of like chiming in when we were talking about earlier about Amazon lifting its restrictions, but I'm not sure if like there's a question there.
No, I think she's probably just chiming in on what we were talking about earlier, as far as they made that update within, I thought it was either earlier this week or last week, but Looks like it was a week ago today, so not too long ago.
And just keep in mind, always have a plan B, right? Like I think that this is often overlooked. You know, when the pandemic hit, no one saw this coming. That the units were going to be restricted. I would always have a plan B. What is my plan B? You know, if I have a garage, you know, just have it prepped for whatever reason. If I need to like send inventory there, if or maybe in this time that now the restrictions are lifted, vet different 3PL services. I mean, the goal with selling on Amazon is that we're going to expand, right? We're going to grow. We're going to build an empire that like ultimately will require some warehousing and will require some additional steps that you'll need to take, and not be just reliant on Amazon, right? Like we might want to sell on Walmart. We might want to sell on you know, Etsy, so on and so forth. So once we start getting to that point of scaling, now the goal with Freedom Builder Bootcamp is to get you to the point where you are selling, and the next goal now will be to take you from selling to expanding, you know, to growing your empire. And so that's why I say, like, always have a plan B. We really don't know what could happen with Amazon, and so in terms of like how they're going to play with us, just be prepared for, you know. They always seem to throw a little curveball, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, the way we have to look at it is, Amazon is a platform that's really, if this is your first time ever selling, it solves a lot of problems already for us that we would initially, if we think it's hard to sell on Amazon, imagine just trying to like build a product from the ground up and warehousing it yourself and promoting it yourself and all that. We solve a lot of issues by using Amazon's, you know, using Amazon FBA. So that's the beauty of it. And it, you know, everything has its pros and its cons, is that, of course, they, you know, we just have to play nice with Amazon.
Spot on.
All right. So Angela says, I want to order a container load of maybe a 20-foot container. How do I calculate how many shipping cartons can fit in it? So my experience has always been is you rely on the supplier for that information, because that'll be very hard to calculate yourself. They tend to deal with this on the day-to-day. So they'll know exactly how many will fit in a 20-foot container. So I would just reach out to your supplier. I mean, they've always given me an answer and like, okay, that many will fill up a container. Perfect. Let's send that many. So
Yeah.
do you have a hack for this, Cole?
I think that's definitely the smart way to go about it. Ask your supplier just to confirm. I like to typically calculate it myself beforehand, and then just kind of confirm with the supplier to make sure that I did it right. But kind of a way you could go about it would be to get the master carton dimensions from your supplier. And then with that, you can take those dimensions and convert it into cubic meters. That'll tell you how many cubic meters per master carton. And then a 20-foot container has, I think it's 27.9 cubic meters of space. So then you can just kind of do the math and see how many cartons would fit in order to take up the 27.9 CBM that you're allowed.
I had a situation where I did some bad math and I had some units remaining. That's why I just rely on them
Yeah.
to do
So
the
what
math
you do,
for me,
keep
because then
them
I'm not
behind?
responsible for the extra units that didn't fit.
Yeah, definitely do that math before you book the shipment. You want to make sure it fits.
All right, let's see. I think the next question is coming from Ankit. Yeah. I have the brand registry and something else is selling on my ASIN. Oh, someone else is selling on your ASIN. I don't have the trademark registration number, but my brand registry is completed and connect with Amazon. I tried to apply for the infringement to brand support, but got rejected. Any suggestions how to remove that seller from my ASIN? Like I said, one of the tactics is to it's not really enforceable, but one of the, sometimes it does get some people rattled and they just like go away, is to gently send a cease and desist letter. And we don't have a cease and, I don't believe we have a template for one, but you can just a Google cease and desist letter and just kind of like format it to fit your needs or your product. They're not complicated. It's just a matter of kind of saying gently like, hey, this product is trademarked. I've got my attorney on it.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you don't have an attorney, don't worry.
They don't need to know all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then see how that helps. And like I said, keep trying seller support and see if like report them. If you go to the help, if you go in the upper right corner, let's see here, you'll see that there's the help link. And you'll want to just, let's see here. I think I've put in here. Let's see here. Just trying to give you the keywords to search, because you just do a search help and it will give you like where you can direct those types of requests. What would it be?
Yeah, I think I typically type in like case log, and that'll pull up any active cases I have, or you can, from there, you should be able to, you talking about the search bar within Seller Central?
I think I may have be onto it here.
Okay.
Yeah, so what you would do is you would just, so you go to the upper right corner in Seller Central, type in help, or click on the help link. It'll pull up where you would normally create a case log. And then just to simplify, there's a search help field, type in report a violation. And that should walk you through the steps on how to report a seller. So try that, see if that helps. Like I said, I do both. And they tend to just kind of go away. And like I said, if the person click on the seller itself, like when you're on your listing, click on it'll show who the sellers are that are selling your product. Click on the seller and see like how many units they have. And if it's just a few, it's nothing to worry about. Like I said, they probably got it at a discount and they're just trying to sell it. So nothing to worry about when it's something like that. So Andy asks, just for clarification, to new inventory restrictions might have been covered, but I was late. So, yes. So the restrictions have been lifted. So, now, of course, keep in mind that one of the things that we keep stressing is that like your sell-through rate and being able to make sure that you're doing proper inventory management is very critical, because they can impose a restriction on you over time and limit you. But if you're making sure that you're selling through and that what other things am I leaving out? That you're not stocking out, that's it can kind of affect you. Not that one's not as critical as like holding up, like having inventory stay a while at Amazon's fulfillment centers. If you could monitor that, your IPI score will remain high and you'll just continue to be able to add more inventory. Oh, I think
There might have just been an add-on to the question, looks like.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. All right, looks like the last question that we have right now is from ZR. And hi, Rolando, good to see you here. This is Rula. My product is finally up in Amazon after 4 months shipping. What is the acceptable return on investment with all the competition? So hi Rula, it's good to see you. I would say that a good return on investment is, I'd say 20% return on investment is probably idyllic, and above, right? 20% and above. So that would be like the bottom, I would say. I don't know if you have like any general rules of thumb.
Yeah. I don't typically look at the ROI a whole lot on like a product. I know it's an important metric to look at. Typically, maybe for like a net margin, I would say when you're deciding on a product, I'd like for it to be between like that 20, maybe 30%, at least the higher end, because then if you're going to factor in any spend on advertising, that gives you a little bit of buffer. So yeah, I think from like a net margin thing, it generally looked like kind of like at 30%, and then obviously anything above that is good. And then looking at the rest of the question, there's a lot there. I guess for the first part, as far as reviews, yeah, I'm not too sure. It's difficult now. I think the one thing obviously is the request for a review button that we have within Jungle Scout. I've used that and it has been a ton of help. It's helped with getting a lot of reviews for new products. Vine program, we touched on that earlier. Just recommend you, if you're going to do it, have a high quality product. It's a good way of getting a lot of quick reviews, but they can be tough graders. And then also an option would be to, if you want to set up some sort of email campaign, I would just recommend you really read through Amazon's restrictions. They've tightened on it quite a bit. It's got to be a pretty generic email. And there's some templates that you can use. But right now, I'd say those couple options are really your best bet. I don't know, Rolando, if there's anything that you've found that works, but from my experience, that's about all we have available to us right now.
Yeah, it's very limiting. Amazon's obviously cracked down a lot on like where you could give it a deep discount, offer your product at a deep discount, and people would review. I mean, I would actually stay away from at using anything that would try to offer like at a deep discount in your product. So that being said, I think, and I know you mentioned besides PPC, I think PPC is going to, the main thing is that it's going to put your product, it's going to move your product to the top of the queue. And instead of being like on page 3,000, you'll be on page 1. So it's a needed investment when you first launch your product, because that's the only way that you're really going to get in front of people. And so that would be definitely first and foremost. And I talked about this earlier too, that like I like to couple that with coupons because they just pop, they just stand out, and it really makes a difference. Even when I'm shopping on Amazon, and I know, like, I get suckered into it. Just
you know what they're doing.
I'll be looking at one product, and then one has the little green banner, and the other doesn't, and I'll click on the one with the green banner because I'm like, hey, like they're giving me 20% off. So I would say that like the coupons is like huge, so huge that I just can't, I wouldn't run PPC without it in the early stages if I want to get reviews, because the name of the game is to sell. And as your products sell, then they're going to start trickling in, because that's the only way that you're going to get a review is if a person purchased and they're very happy with the product, they'll write a review. And then with the request of, you got them on the back end with the request of review automatically just being automated for you. And so, if they didn't on their own accord, that email will probably get them, and they'll at least, rate you. So that's why I say there's aside from that, and if you're not brand registered, you can't do Vine. Yeah, I think that would be your best opportunity. And then it says also, so it looks like we're running out of time, but we'll end with the remaining questions you have here. It says also, I just made a mistake by forgetting to emphasize the standard size for the product with its packaging. As a result, for only 0.2 inches, Amazon is charging me an oversized fee that dramatically reduced my profit from $7 per unit to $2 per unit. Any advice? You should be able to get that corrected, definitely. If it's not something that you can do, because sometimes they'll lock out that section of your listing when you were creating your listing. Sometimes you can't go in and change that and alter it. That would be something that I would contact seller support and just be on them about it and get it corrected, because yeah, if it's going to make that big of a difference, getting it corrected is huge. So, and they'll correct it. It's just a matter of getting the right person at sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going through this exact same scenario right now. All you can really do is reach out to seller support, ask them to create a request to remeasure, and they'll remeasure it, reweigh it for you. So if it is within their requirements, they'll go ahead and update the fees, and they usually refund you for all the sales you made at that price. But yeah, if your package is actually over their requirement, I would just recommend you talk to your supplier and get that fixed on the next shipment, because obviously it has a huge impact on profit if it's oversized versus standard.
All right, and with that, it looks like we are out of time, but I just want to have a couple of announcements if in case you missed this from early on. One, the coaching sessions will now take a weekly cadence. So this is like great news. You have lifetime access to Freedom Builder Bootcamp. So, you know, take full advantage of these live coaching calls that will be happening weekly. And it's Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that they will be happening. It's going to be the entire team at Jungle Scout, as well as guest speakers will get in here and just, we're really trying to deliver and over deliver on our promise to help you guys through this seller journey. And then in addition to that, something to really that you'll want to be present at and attend is next week. We kick off JungleCon. This is the first ever conference held by Jungle Scout. It's going to be held virtual because, of course, the pandemic, but it's huge. We've already got several people in attendance, amazing speakers. The lineup is great. I think, are you a part of that as well?
Yeah, part of the seller roundtable, yeah. So a small little blip of it.
Yeah, so Cole will be there and the entire Jungle Scout team. So definitely bookmark it. And what I'll do is at the end, I'll drop the link to it so that you can register for it. It's basically May 5th, May 6th. And yeah, so we look forward to seeing you there. And that's all for today. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Take care and keep crushing it.